Captain Kim Tae-ho walked slowly across the bridge of the UES Endeavour. The ship hummed quietly around him as it moved through the dark space between stars. This was humanity's first real journey into the unknown parts of the galaxy. After 200 years of space travel, they were finally ready to meet whatever was out there. "Captain," called Lee Minotaur from her station. She was the ship's communications officer, a young woman who had dreamed of this moment since she was a child. "I'm picking up something on the long-range sensors. It's big." Tae-ho moved to stand behind her chair. On the screen in front of them, dozens of red dots appeared. Ships. Alien ships. His heart began to beat faster, but he kept his voice calm. "How many?" "At least 50 vessels, sir. Maybe more." Minotaur's fingers danced over her controls. "They're much larger than anything we've ever built." The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of machines. Everyone knew this was the moment humanity had been preparing for. First contact with an alien species. Tae-ho looked around at his crew. These were good people. Scientists, explorers, dreamers who had left Earth to find something wonderful in the stars. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies. Let's say hello." Minotaur nodded and began broadcasting humanity's first message to an alien race. It was simple and peaceful. They explained who they were, where they came from, and that they wanted to be friends. The message played over and over as they waited for a response. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The alien fleet just sat there in space, not moving, not responding. Tae-ho began to worry. Maybe they couldn't understand the message. Maybe their technology was too different. "Keep trying," he told Minotaur. "Use every language we have. Mathematics. Music. Anything." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Park Soo-jin was watching her screens with growing concern. The alien ships were scanning them with some kind of energy beam. It felt wrong somehow, like being watched by a predator. She called the bridge. "Captain, they're looking us over pretty carefully down here. My instruments are going crazy." "Any sign of weapons?" asked Security Chief Choi Han-sol from his station. He was a former soldier who had seen real combat on the colony worlds. Something about this situation made his old instincts scream danger. "Hard to tell," Soo-jin replied. "But those ships are armed for war, sir. No doubt about it." Tae-ho frowned. Why would explorers need so many weapons? Unless they weren't explorers at all. Far across the empty space between the two fleets, Admiral Vector of the Zelari Confederation stood in his own command center. He was tall and covered in thick gray skin that looked like stone. His eyes were black and cold as winter. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The Zelari had ruled this part of the galaxy for 1,000 years. They had conquered 4 to 7 different worlds and enslaved dozens of species. To them, strength was everything. The weak existed only to serve the strong. "What are these creatures doing?" Vector asked his intelligence officer. "They appear to be trying to communicate, Admiral. The same message over and over. They claim to come in peace." Vector made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was cold and harsh. "Peace? Look at their pathetic little ship. One vessel against our entire fleet. If they truly came in peace, they would have brought gifts and tribute. Instead, they dare to speak to us as equals." He studied the human ship on his screen. It was so small compared to his mighty warships. So weak and helpless. These humans obviously didn't understand how the galaxy really worked. Someone needed to teach them their place. "Sir," another officer spoke up. "Should we capture them for questioning? We could learn about their home world." "No," Vector said simply. "Destroy them. Show these insects what happens when they waste the Confederation's time. Let this be a lesson to their entire species." Back on the Endeavour, Minotaur suddenly straightened in her chair. "Captain. They are powering weapons." Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Red lights flashed as the computer announced incoming danger. Tae-ho grabbed the nearest comm unit. "All hands, this is the captain. Brace for impact. Repeat, brace for impact." But there was no time. The Zelari plasma cannons fired all at once. Beams of pure energy crossed the space between the fleets in seconds. They hit the Endeavour with the force of a small star. The ship simply vanished. 300 human beings, including Captain Kim Tae-ho, Communications Officer Lee Minotaur, Chief Engineer Park Soo-jin, and Security Chief Choi Han-sol, died in an instant. They had come to the stars looking for friends and found only death. Admiral Vector watched the explosion fade and felt nothing. Just another primitive species that didn't know its place. His fleet would continue to the human homeworlds and finish the job. These creatures would make decent slaves, if any survived what was coming. He had no idea what he had just started. Humanity had many fine qualities, but forgiveness was not one of them. And when they learned what had happened to the Endeavor, the galaxy would burn. The war that would reshape everything had begun with murder in the darkness between stars. The emergency beacon from the UES Endeavor traveled through space for 3 weeks before reaching the nearest human communication relay. It was a simple automated signal, the kind every deep space vessel carried. When a ship was destroyed, the beacon would launch itself and carry news of what happened back home. On Earth, the signal arrived during the night shift at Deep Space Communications. Technician Park Hyun-woo was drinking coffee and reading reports when his computer started making urgent beeping sounds. He looked at his screen and saw the beacon's message. His coffee mug fell from his hand and shattered on the floor. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh no, no, no." Within an hour, the news had reached the highest levels of human government. President Yoon Dae-eun was pulled from her sleep by her security chief. She put on her robe and walked quickly to the emergency command center deep beneath the Capitol building. Her advisors were already waiting, their faces grim in the harsh artificial light. Admiral Kang Ho-suk stood at the main display screen. He was an old man who had served in the colonial wars 20 years ago. He had seen death before, but this was different. This was murder. "Tell me," President Yoon said simply. The admiral's voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he spoke. The Endeavor made contact with an unknown alien fleet at coordinate 77 Alpha. They broadcast standard first contact protocols for over an hour. The aliens responded by destroying the ship with all hands. No survivors. The room fell silent. President Yoon closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, something had changed in her face. Something hard and cold that hadn't been there before. 300 souls, she whispered. Murdered without provocation. Defense Minister Lim Jae-won activated the holographic display. It showed Earth's current military strength. The numbers were not encouraging. Most of humanity's ships were built for exploration, mining, or cargo transport. They had weapons, but they were designed to deal with pirates and small conflicts between colonies. He said carefully, we have mining ships, cargo haulers, and maybe 50 combat-capable vessels. We're not prepared for a war against an advanced alien empire. Maybe we should try to negotiate, offer tribute, show them we're not a threat. President Yoon turned to look at him. Her voice was quiet, but everyone in the room heard every word clearly. Then we get prepared, she said. Steel entered her voice like a blade being drawn. Signal all colonies. Signal every shipyard. Contact every military commander and every factory owner. As of this moment, humanity is at war. The transformation began immediately. Across human space, from Earth to the furthest colonies, the news spread like wildfire. The Endeavor was destroyed. 300 innocent explorers were dead. Humanity had been attacked without warning or reason. Dr. Shin Bo-ram was working late in her laboratory on Luna when the call came. She was humanity's leading weapons researcher, a brilliant woman who had spent her career developing better tools for mining asteroids and defending cargo ships from raiders. Now she was being offered unlimited funding and resources for a very different purpose. How long do we have? She asked the government official on the video call. We don't know, came the reply. The alien fleet that destroyed the Endeavor is heading toward our colonies. It could be weeks, months, or years before they arrive. We need weapons that can stop them. Dr. Shin looked around her small, peaceful laboratory. By tomorrow, it would be the center of a massive military research project. She thought about Captain Kim Tai-ho and his crew, floating dead in the darkness of space, and her jaw tightened. You'll have them, she promised. On Mars, factory supervisor Nam Kitai received similar orders. His manufacturing plants had been producing mining equipment, water recyclers, and atmospheric processors for the colony worlds. Now he stood in his main factory floor, watching as workers began tearing out the old assembly lines. What are we building now, boss? Asked his assistant, a young woman named Kim Ui. Nam looked at the blueprints on his tablet. Missile launchers. Plasma cannons. Armor plating for warships that didn't exist yet. Whatever it takes to keep us alive, he said. The workers didn't complain. They had all heard the news. They knew that somewhere out in the dark, an alien fleet was coming to destroy their homes and enslave their families. They worked through the night and into the next day, and the day after that. Sarah was a mining coordinator on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Her job was organizing the extraction of rare metals from the frozen surface. When the war orders came through, she began stockpiling everything her crews could dig up. Titanium for ship hulls. Uranium for reactors. Rare earth elements for electronics and weapons systems. Strip mine everything, she told her crews. Environmental protection is suspended. We need every gram of metal we can get. The miners worked like demons possessed. They knew their children's lives depended on how much material they could extract. The quiet moon became a hive of activity as massive machines tore into the ice, searching for the materials that would build humanity's war machine. Across human space, the same scene played out on 1,000 worlds. Humanity was waking up. For 200 years, they had been peaceful explorers and builders. They had forgotten what their species was really capable of when threatened with extinction. The Zalari had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were attacking a weak, peaceful race. Instead, they had awakened something that had survived ice ages, world wars, and the colonization of hostile alien worlds. They had awakened survivors. And survivors fight back. The Zalari invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Sol system like a pack of metal wolves. 15 massive warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Fleet Commander Rathuel stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the small human colony ahead. Intelligence reports were correct, he told his officers. 1 mining colony. Maybe 50,000 inhabitants. 3 small defense ships. This will be over quickly. Rathuel was a veteran warrior who had conquered 12 different species for the Confederation. He had read the reports about these humans. Primitive technology. No real military tradition. They built their ships for exploration and commerce, not war. This would be another easy victory to add to his collection. He was very wrong. Captain Song Minute Ho stood on the bridge of the defense ship New Busan. It had been a cargo hauler just 6 months ago, carrying supplies between the outer colonies. Now it was fitted with missile launchers and energy cannons that Dr. Shin Boram's team had designed. The ship wasn't pretty, but it could fight. Sir, his communications officer reported, the alien fleet is hailing us. Put them through. The face that appeared on the screen was nightmare fuel. Gray skin like stone, black eyes without mercy, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the words came through the translation computer in a cold, mechanical voice. Human colony, the alien commander said, I am Fleet Commander Rathuel of the Zalari Confederation. You will surrender immediately. Your ships will be destroyed. Your population will be enslaved. Resistance is pointless. Song Minute Ho looked around his small bridge. His crew was young and scared, but they were ready. These people had come to New Sol Colony to build a better life among the stars. They had families here. Children who played in the artificial parks and went to school in the underground classrooms. He keyed the transmitter. His response was broadcast not just to the Zalari fleet, but to every human settlement within range. Come and take it. The battle began immediately. The Zalari ships moved forward in perfect formation, just like they always did. Their weapons were powerful and their shields were strong. They expected the humans to run or hide or beg for mercy. Instead, the 3 human ships charged straight at them. Pilot On Yujin sat in the cockpit of her fighter, one of 12 small craft launched from the colony's hidden bays. She was 24 years old, a mining surveyor who had learned to fly in the asteroid fields. She had never fought in a real battle before, but she had grown up hearing stories about Earth's old wars. All fighters, this is base control, came the voice in her headset. Hit them fast and hard. Make every shot count. The fighters spread out and dove toward the alien fleet. Rathuel watched them approach and almost laughed. Tiny ships against his massive cruisers. It was like insects attacking elephants. But these insects had stingers. On Yujin's fighter carried 4 nuclear missiles, originally designed for breaking up large asteroids. She selected the largest enemy ship she could see and armed her weapons. The alien vessel's point defense systems tried to shoot down her missiles, but she was flying too fast and too close. 3 missiles struck the alien ship's shields. They flared and held. The 4th missile punched through and hit the hull near the engine section. The explosion tore a massive hole in the ship's side. Got one, she shouted over the radio. But her celebration was short. Enemy fighters were swarming toward her, and her ship was damaged. She looked at her fuel gauge and made a decision that would be remembered forever. This is Yujin, she broadcast. Tell my parents I love them. She turned her fighter around and flew it straight into the wounded Zalari cruiser's engine core. The nuclear explosion that followed lit up the night sky of New Sol Colony like a second sun. When the light faded, both ships were gone. The battle in space lasted 3 hours. When it was over, All 3 human defense ships were destroyed. 8 of the 12 fighters were gone. But the Zalari had lost 3 ships and taken heavy damage to 4 others. It was supposed to be an easy victory. Instead, it had cost them more than most of their previous conquests combined. But the real fight was just beginning. The surviving Zalari ships landed troops on New Sol Colony. Thousands of alien warriors in powered armor began moving through the underground tunnels and corridors. They expected the human civilians to hide and surrender. Instead, they found people like Kim So-young waiting for them. Kim So-young taught mathematics to children in the colony school. She was a quiet woman who loved books and classical music. When the aliens broke into her section of the colony, they found her and 30 other civilians armed with mining tools and homemade explosives. "You want our home?" she asked the alien squad leader. "Then you can die for it." The improvised bombs were made from mining charges and fertilizer. They brought down entire sections of tunnel, trapping alien squads underground. The humans fought from hiding places in the walls and ceiling, using their knowledge of the colony's layout to strike and disappear. Lee Dong-wook was a mechanic who maintained the colony's atmospheric processes. He knew every pipe and conduit in the settlement. He led groups of volunteers through maintenance shafts, hitting alien patrols from behind and vanishing before they could respond. The battle for New Sol Colony lasted 2 weeks. In the end, the Zalari won. The human defenders were overwhelmed and the colony fell. But it had cost the invaders hundreds of warriors and most of their equipment. Fleet Commander Rathuel walked through the ruins, his tactical officer beside him. The destruction was incredible. These humans had fought like demons, using every advantage they could find. "Sir," the officer said nervously, "the humans, they fight like cornered animals. They don't follow standard military doctrine. They don't surrender when they are beaten. They just keep fighting until they are dead." Rathuel nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand that his intelligence reports had been very, very wrong. Dr. Shin Boram stood in her laboratory on Luna, surrounded by pieces of destroyed Zalari technology. 6 months of war had given humanity something they had never had before: alien weapons to study. Her team of scientists worked around the clock, taking apart energy cannons and shield generators like children with new toys. "Look at this," she said to her assistant, Dr. Kim Woo-jin, pointing to a glowing crystal inside an alien weapon. "This is their power source. It's incredibly advanced, but they're using it all wrong." The crystal was the size of a human fist and pulsed with blue light. According to the Zalari design, it should provide power for maybe 6 hours of continuous firing. But Dr. Shin had discovered something interesting. The aliens had built their weapons the same way for hundreds of years. They never tried to make them better. "They are stuck in the past," she explained to Admiral Kang Ho-suk during their weekly video conference. "Their energy weapons are powerful but inefficient. We've increased output by 30% and reduced power consumption by half. A human ship can now outfight a Zalari vessel twice its size." Admiral Kang looked tired. The war was taking its toll on everyone, but especially the military commanders who had to send young people to die in space battles. "How many ships can you upgrade this month?" 50, maybe 60. "We're working as fast as we can." Dr. Shin looked at the data on her screen. "Admiral, we're not just copying their technology anymore. We're making it better. Our weapons are more powerful, our shields are stronger, and our ships are faster. The Zalari think they are fighting primitive humans. They have no idea what's coming." Across the solar system, Intelligence Officer Jang Mi-kyung was making equally important discoveries. She worked in a secure facility deep beneath the surface of Mars, surrounded by computers that processed captured Zalari communications 24 hours a day. Jang was a quiet woman who had spent her career studying alien languages and cultures. Now she was using those skills to understand humanity's enemies. She had learned their language, studied their military history, and analyzed thousands of battle reports. "They are predictable," she reported to the military council. "Honor bound. They always attack the same way." She brought up a holographic display showing Zalari fleet movements over the past 6 months. Every battle followed the same pattern. The aliens formed up in neat formations, advanced slowly, and attacked the strongest enemy position first. It was how they had fought for 1,000 years. "They can't adapt," she continued. "Their whole culture is based on following ancient traditions. When we do something unexpected, they don't know how to respond. We can use this against them." Captain Park Jin-woo was the perfect person to put this knowledge to use. He was young and aggressive, a former smuggler who knew how to think outside the rules. The military had given him command of a new type of warship, fast, heavily armed, and designed to hit the enemy where they least expected it. His ship, the Soul's Revenge, led a strike force of 12 similar vessels. They had been modified with captured Zalari technology, but they fought like no alien ship ever would. Instead of attacking in formation, they spread out and struck from multiple directions. Instead of targeting the strongest enemy ships first, they went after supply vessels and communication relays. Remember, Park told his captains over the radio, "We're not here to fight fair. We're here to win." The strike force jumped into hyperspace using captured Zalari navigation data. Intelligence Officer Jang had cracked their hyperspace routes, the secret pathways that connected their empire. Now human ships could appear anywhere in Zalari territory without warning. Their first target was a supply depot in the Kethran system, 300 light-years behind enemy lines. The Zalari had never been attacked so far from the front. They thought it was impossible. Park's ships dropped out of hyperspace right on top of the depot. The alien garrison had maybe 30 seconds to realize what was happening before the human missiles started hitting. The depot, with its massive stockpiles of weapons and fuel, exploded like a small star. "Target destroyed," reported Captain Lee Sung-minute from the destroyer Busan's Fury. Moving to secondary target. The second depot died just as quickly. So did the third. By the time Zalari reinforcements arrived, the human ships were gone, vanished back into hyperspace like ghosts. The attack sent shockwaves through the Zalari High Command. War Chieftain Thekmo stood before the Council of Fleet Commanders, his stone-gray face showing an emotion his people rarely experienced: fear. "How is this possible?" demanded Fleet Admiral Vorthake. "Those supply depots were guarded. They had early warning systems. How did the humans get past our defenses?" Thekmos had been studying the human attacks for weeks. The answer was disturbing. "They're using our own hyperspace routes against us. Somehow, they've learned our navigation secrets. They can appear anywhere in our territory." "Impossible," another commander said. "Our codes are unbreakable." "And yet here we are," Thekmos replied coldly. 3 supply depots destroyed. 200 ships worth of supplies lost. The humans are not following our military doctrine. They're not fighting honorable battles. They strike from the shadows and vanish before we can respond. He activated a holographic display showing recent battle data. The numbers were frightening. Human ships were becoming more powerful while Zalari forces grew weaker. The aliens had superior numbers, but the humans were outfighting them with better technology and smarter tactics. "These humans," he said quietly, "they think like us, but fight like demons. They learn our strengths and turn them into weaknesses. They copy our technology and make it better. We may have made a grave error attacking them." The council chamber fell silent. For the first time in 1,000 years, the mighty Zalari Confederation was afraid. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and it was very, very angry. 2 years had passed since the destruction of the UES Endeavour. Admiral Kim Tae-young stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Earth's Vengeance, watching as the massive human fleet prepared for the final assault. Around him, 300 warships moved through space like a school of metal sharks. These were not the same ships that had defended the colonies 2 years ago. These vessels were born from the marriage of human creativity and captured Zalari technology. They were faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Admiral," reported his navigation officer, "we're approaching the Zalari system. The enemy homeworld is straight ahead." Tae-young nodded. He was a quiet man who had lost his younger brother in the destruction of New Sol Colony. Like everyone in the fleet, he had personal reasons for being here. The crew of every ship carried the names of friends and family members who had died in the war. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Today we finish what they started." Zalari's prime had never been attacked in 1,000 years of Zalari expansion. The planet was surrounded by orbital defense stations, each one the size of a small moon. Massive energy cannons pointed outward toward space, ready to destroy any enemy that dared approach the sacred homeworld. But the humans didn't approach like any enemy the Zalari had ever faced. Captain Ryu Haijin commanded a squadron of assault ships designed specifically for boarding actions. Her vessels were small and fast, built to slip past enemy defenses and deliver soldiers directly onto enemy stations. She had been a Marine before the war, trained in close-quarters combat. Now she led teams of veterans who had learned to fight in the metal corridors of alien ships. "Remember," she told her boarding teams over the radio, "these stations control the planetary defenses. Take them out and the homeworld is defenseless. No mercy, no quarter. They didn't show any to our people." The boarding ships launched from the main fleet like angry wasps, accelerating toward the orbital stations at tremendous speed. The Zalari point defense systems tried to stop them, but the human ships were too fast and too small. They slammed into docking bays and cargo holds, cutting through metal with plasma torches. Inside the stations, the fighting was brutal. The Zalari defenders had never faced human soldiers in close combat before. They learned quickly that humans didn't follow the same rules of war that civilized species used. When cornered, humans fought with knives and bare hands. When outnumbered, they used explosives to bring down entire sections of the station. Station 7 is secured, reported Sergeant Park Minutsayo over the comm system. His voice was tired but determined. Defense guns are offline. Moving to the next target. One by one, the orbital stations fell. The great weapons that had protected Zalari's prime for centuries went silent. For the first time in their history, the Zalari homeworld was vulnerable. Commander Bae Sung-ho led the ground assault forces. His ships landed on the planet's surface while the orbital battle raged overhead. The Zalari had billions of soldiers, but they had never fought a defensive war before. They didn't know how to protect their own homes. Secure the military headquarters, Bae ordered his troops as they moved through the alien city. Cut off their communications. Make sure they can't coordinate their defenses. The human soldiers moved like ghosts through the streets. They used captured Zalari vehicles and wore modified alien armor. From a distance, they looked like another Zalari unit. By the time the defenders realized what was happening, it was too late. The siege of Zalari's prime lasted 3 months. The planet that had ruled an empire was slowly strangled as human forces cut off all supply routes. Ships carrying food and medical supplies were turned away. Communication networks were jammed. The mighty Zalari war machine ground to a halt. In his command bunker deep beneath the planetary capital, War Chieftain Thekmos watched his empire crumble. Reports came in every hour of more defeats, more lost worlds, more dead warriors. The humans were everywhere, striking at targets across 1,000 light-years of space. "Sir," his aide reported, "the outer colonies are requesting permission to surrender. They can't hold out much longer." Thekmos closed his black eyes and made a decision that would have been unthinkable just 3 years ago. He opened a direct communication channel to Earth. President Yoon Daeun appeared on the screen. She looked older than she had at the beginning of the war, her hair gray and her face lined with stress. But her eyes were still hard as steel. "President Yoon," Thekmos said, his voice breaking with desperation, "I am War Chieftain Thekmos of the Zalari Confederation. I request negotiations. We withdraw from your space. The war ends here. Please, no more killing." Yoon looked at him for a long moment. Behind her, he could see the flags of every human colony that had been attacked. The names of every ship that had been destroyed. The faces of every person who had died. When she spoke, her words were broadcast throughout the galaxy. Every species with radio technology heard humanity's answer. "You murdered 300 innocent explorers who came to you in peace. You invaded our homes. You enslaved our people. You wanted a war with humanity." Her voice grew cold as winter. "You have it. Until your empire is dust. Until every one of your worlds knows the price of attacking Earth. Until the galaxy understands that humanity remembers its debts." The Zalari Confederation fell within 6 months. Their great fleets were destroyed or scattered. Their colony worlds declared independence or were occupied by human forces. The empire that had ruled for 1,000 years became a memory. In the aftermath, surviving Zalari leaders sent desperate warnings to every species they could contact. The message was simple: avoid the humans at all costs. Do not threaten them. Do not attack them. They are not like other species. They are survivors who never forget and never forgive. Humanity took its place among the galactic powers. They were no longer the naive explorers who had sent the Endeavor into unknown space. The war had changed them, made them harder and more dangerous. Other species watched them with a mixture of respect and fear. The humans had proven something that would reshape galactic politics forever: it was better to have them as friends than as enemies. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.